I wanted to ask for your thoughts on what seems to be an increasingly complex part of international trade agreements. Increasingly it's the case that negotiating partners, we've seen this with Canada, are demanding that any potential difficulties with implementation where devolved competence matters may be involved are dealt with up front. So, for example, in the Canadian situation, the provinces were engaged right at the beginning of the process, and that there's assurances that the final agreed text of any agreement may be delivered. With that being the case, can you comment to the committee on what you see to be the important role of consultation prior to agreements? Do you believe this bill sets out a suitable framework for such consultation? And in addition to that, what would be the implications if devolved administrations have had some measure of consent reserve that actually implied a veto on implementation of our internationally agreed obligations? So it's quite a complex question in 2 or 3 parts, but I think one that is going to be of considerable interest to the committee going forward.
Well, I certainly don't feel qualified to be commenting particularly on devolved administrations. It's not part of my remit or our industries, but where we're particularly clustered or and such. So I don't feel qualified to answer that particularly. So I defer to the 2 gentlemen here who probably know more about that.
Can't hear.
Defer to the 2 gentlemen.
Defer to the others.
I'm not convinced I'm equally able to answer, but I think that consultation is definitely a good thing. I think there is a voice that needs to be heard. There are various parties that look for representation, not necessarily to veto anything, but certainly to ensure that the best interests of all parts of the UK are represented.
Thank you.
Yeah, from my point of view, Business for Scotland was founded in 1996 to actually campaign for devolution and the set up of the Scottish Parliament. So protecting the powers of devolution is actually one of our key remits. So this is an area that we've been investigating. And this is one part of the whole Brexit process. And the EU withdrawal bill centralised about 100 European influence powers in Whitehall after Brexit, even though many of those are actually crossover with the devolved, the responsibilities of the devolved parliaments and assemblies. The deadline to amend that Clause 11 was missed, and that means that we're sitting here without proper protections in place. This bill seems to suggest that it puts the power to act almost unilaterally in the hands of a single minister who has what has been labelled a hard Brexit agenda, and without clear protections on the public right to consult, scrutinise or stop trade deals. So at best this means remains a great deal of confusion over how trade negotiations will be handled where they overlap with the devolved assemblies and parliaments, which is damaging, I think, to business. And at worst, it looks like a deliberate attempt to actually delay the transfer of EU-held powers, in particular to the devolved parliaments, until after the UK government has actually had free rein to agree deals that you could say run roughshod over the devolution agreements that currently exist in these islands. A key example is that if we're going to do an instant trade deal that we want to do with America, it's got to be probably the highest priority. If we look at what we can do with them, TTIP is a great guide. It's quite progressed. The key reason that TTIP didn't actually get progressed in the EU is because the EU wanted to put protections to allow governments to maintain public services such as the NHS, and that is going to be something that the United States are very likely to want to have access to our NHS. Now, I was trained in negotiation. I don't know much about trade negotiations, but I was trained in negotiation by a FTSE 100 company and by an American top 500 company. And the very first rule of negotiation is make sure the person you're negotiating with has the ability to say yes to the deal you're presenting. If we have devolved parliaments who have control over the NHS, the Americans will look at that and say, well, you don't have the ability to actually agree a trade deal with us. So, ipso facto, devolution is actually incompatible with rapid trade deals done, especially under a World Trade Organization agreement. And I see that as being a problem and potentially creating constitutional issues, not just in Scotland, but in Northern Ireland in particular as well.
Thank you. That was an extremely interesting response, and I'm sure one that will help our deliberations this afternoon when we come to the first set of amendments, because you've raised a number of very serious constitutional questions. It may be that the Minister has very clear answers to them, but I think we'll all be very keen to hear what they are. Thank you very much.